Welcome to the Winged Wheel Podcast, the number one source for news, analysis, and discussion on the Detroit Red Wings, the NHL, and all things hockey. Here are your hosts, Ryan Hanna, Brad Crisco, and Evan Lopsinger.
This is usually the kind of thing I would say for the Patreon exclusive, but it's the off season, and I'll give the people a taste of what we're like off camera, off air, and what Brad and I just experienced. Evan walked into my house and said he wants a Pomeranian. Like, apropos of nothing at all, Evan goes, I've always wanted a Pomeranian. So if you're like, wow, this Evan guy's weird, I can't make left or right of him, like, nothing about him matches what I think I know, and you think he doesn't have any, passion for this life based on how he's always staring a mile into the distance, a self-proclaimed cat guy walks into my house, looks at Brad and I in the eyes and says, I want a Pomeranian.
We were talking about why Tully is the way Tully is.
Tully being my second dog.
Yes.
It was the devil incarnate.
Yes.
Right, that's fair. And so you wanted...
It's either a Greyhound or a Pomeranian. Those are the two options in our household.
Very similar dogs,
Yes.
for sure.
Yeah.
And you ended that with, and we're not going to get a dog, of course.
No, we're not. Well, we would like one.
Ryan, I think you're leaving out the best bit of it all. He wants it to be brown, so it looks like a fuzzy little bear.
Exactly.
Whatever preconceived notions you have about Evan Lopsinger in your head, throw them out. I promise you, throw them out. We still don't know what they should be, but just throw them out. A mystery. All right. It's the off season, but we still have hockey to talk about. We have Red Wings to talk about. We have the NHL playoffs to talk about, which if you were to show an alien one hockey game, it might be that LA Edmonton game 1.
Jeez.
They would leave the planet immediately. They'd be like, this is way too intense for me, but wild so far. Plenty to discuss, folks. Welcome to the Winged Wheel Podcast, here to talk to you about all things Detroit Red Wings hockey, the world of the NHL, and lots more. I'm one of your hosts, Ryan Hanna.
I'm Brad Crisco.
And I'm Evan.
On this episode of the Winged Wheel Podcast, we are going to be doubling back a little bit on something that we talked about last episode, which is the Red Wings end of season media, what Larkin's comments meant, how significant they were, giving that some more attention because last episode was our full season in review. And then we're going to be discussing Steve Yzerman and Todd McLellan and what we might be able to expect from them in terms of media. More on the Red Wings before jumping into NHL and playoff updates. The playoffs are well underway with a lot of big storylines, but so are the storylines across the league with Rutherford and Seattle and the Islanders all giving us plenty to discuss. I think there's a Drury update right before we hit record here. We'll get into our prospect profile for this episode and whatever else comes up before overtime. Before all that, very quickly, the Winged Wheel Podcast is primarily supported by our Patreon supporters, patreon.com/Winged Wheel Podcast. If you want to support the show, you get access to benefits like our bonus overtime episodes. They record right after these main ones. We let loose, we have fun, we tell stories, we have thoughts with Evan, bloopers, any questions that didn't make the main show. It's a great time. You also get access to our Patreon exclusive Discord, phenomenal community, and you're also automatically entered into all of our giveaways. In season, we give away 2 tickets to every Detroit Red Wings home game going directly to our Patreon supporters. We have big plans for the offseason as well as to what to do for giveaways on that front. So again, patreon.com/Winged Wheel Podcast. I want to start this conversation off with a primer and acknowledging again that we talked about Larkin's comments at the end of season media, the locker cleanout media, last episode, but we did have to kind of move past it pretty quickly just because it was the full season in review, 2-hour episode, and we wanted to give it the time of day. So, big grain of salt here. This isn't coming back up to make it a bigger deal than it is or to try to pour kerosene on a fire or anything, but just to kind of dive into the comments a little bit more because I do think they were significant. As it usually goes with these things, it's not nothing. Like it wasn't a nothing throwaway comment, so I think dismissing it is incorrect in my opinion. I know some folks wanted to make it so it wasn't significant at all, and I don't really think that's the case here. I think they were pretty pointed comments relative to what you usually hear from Larkin or a player in that position. But also it's not to the extreme of like if you're talking trade or, wants out or anything like that, like that's insane. Like that is way further than you should take it. The boring truth is that the comments Larkin made are more or less in the middle here. So to reiterate, Larkin, of his own accord, brought up the trade deadline when answering a larger question about his play and everything. And he said something to the effect of, you got to come up with wins. And I think especially in March, it was hard, that we didn't do anything. And I felt the group they didn't gain any momentum from the trade deadline. And, guys were kind of down about it. Kind of went on about that in terms of it would have been nice to add something at the trade deadline or to that effect. Just discussed they didn't get that momentum boost and it affected the room. To me, Larkin bringing the trade deadline up of his own accord meant that this is something that he was thinking about, and he's a captain of the team. You don't bring this kind of thing up without, knowing what you're doing, and so he was kind of carefully placing it. And I don't know what other way to say it other than I think he wanted that stated publicly. Like you can sense a frustration there because Larkin is grappling with the fact that he's, aging beyond his absolute tippy top of his prime, and he's been waiting a long time to win. So the trade deadline is the focus in his eyes because he feels like his team has been right there 3 years in a row. And yeah, I do think this was a little bit of a statement from Dylan Larkin.
Yeah, and he has every right to be frustrated. He has been here for all 9 years of the playoff drought. He will never say it because he's a good leader. He's a good captain, but he's probably looking around that room and at some of the guys who aren't pulling their weight and just frustrated. Like, this group is not great. And like I said, any good leader is not going to say that to his teammates, is not going to say that publicly. They try to boost the room up, but he saw what we all saw. Like, hockey players aren't dumb. They know what's going on around them. They know who's overperforming, underperforming, et cetera, et cetera. They probably have a better idea of it than we do because...
Sorry, that's true, but hockey players are absolutely dumb. Like,
hockey player...
With the stupidest people you'll ever meet, sitting at this table as well. But go on.
With hockey-related matters, they're not dumb. And so like, he's not oblivious, and he's right to be frustrated that year in, year out, at least for a few years now, they're right there and they can't get in. And would a addition at the deadline help? Absolutely, 100%. But there's a couple key points I want to make here. One I made last episode, which I'll repeat, and then the other one I want to add context to. This is not to rip on Larkin or to say his feelings aren't justified or to say he's a bad leader. This is not at all. But you need to force Yzerman's hand. Give him a reason to add. You went into the deadline on a 4-game losing streak, 2 to a team you were directly battling with for that spot. You need to force his hand. If you are not in a playoff spot at the deadline, no GM in their right mind should add. Especially at a deadline this year where the prices were as high as they were. And again, I'll repeat, the players don't care what the prices are. They don't care about picks. They don't care about prospects. They care about the right now, and justifiably. But beyond the context of that 4-game losing streak and the garbage start they had to this season, which all threw up huge red flags to Yzerman going, hey, maybe this isn't a playoff team and not worth investing in for this season. And I'll agree with Yzerman on that. This was the 3rd March in a row they melted down. They could have got in last year and they melted down. They could have got in the year before. They melted down. This team, outside of 2 7-game stretches, has not given Yzerman reason to believe he should be adding at the deadline. You need to adopt the mentality of, oh, he doesn't think we'll get in, we'll show him, instead of continuing the free fall and letting it affect the room. Like, I can't, again, I'm criticizing Larkin for this one thing. He's not a bad leader, not a bad guy, but this one thing, he could not be more wrong in how he's approaching it and his mentality towards it.
So here's where I'll push back on that, because Larkin pointed out the trade deadline, because like you said, Brad, as a player, you're focused on the here and now, you're focused on what's in front of you, and you don't care about picks. You don't care about you especially don't care about picks because those are people who might take your job in the future. So obviously not. But if you reframe it and think Larkin, let's say he's not complaining about the trade deadline. He's just complaining that the team wasn't equipped with what they needed to do and they're so close in general, because the trade deadline was just the most recent opportunity. If Larkin had said, between the trade deadline and the moves in free agency, it's frustrating in whatever words you want to phrase that, then I think that's incredibly fair. And I think that's in reality, whether, Larkin said so or not, that's the reality of the complaint here. Because like you noted, Brad, he's not dumb. He knows where the deficiencies and holes are on this team. He sees the players that they have to go out there and give, 13, 14, 15 plus minutes who are, below replacement level some nights, a lot of nights. And he's like, this is holding back a team who has a near 40 goal scorer, who has Patrick Kane, who has Seider and Edvinsson, who has Lucas Raymond, who's maybe on his way to being a superstar. And that's like, I know the trade deadline thing is getting the attention here, and it should. And I come to the same logic as you, Brad, which is there might be a couple deals here and there where you're like, that would have been nice for the Red Wings. The Zetterlund one was pointed out before, but by and large, it was really pricey. But if you expand that out to the free agency decisions, the ones that were made and the ones that maybe weren't, then I think there's a merit to it, not to the point where it's like, okay, before it was Yzerman is right and Larkin is wrong, but it's what I mentioned last episode is everyone here has, based on their own context and what they should care about, they have a leg to stand on. I get the complaints about how Larkin raised it, but to me, I'm like, I would be concerned if this wasn't a massive frustration for him. It has been a lot of years, and that doesn't change the reality of the tact that Yzerman has to take. But then there are also very valid complaints that we've been making on this show about free agency as well. So if you expand that scope, to me, it makes a lot more sense than I think what you just mentioned.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%, but that's not what he said. And of course, I don't think he could say that, because if he goes, yeah, well, our free agency sucked, he might as well be pointing at Tarasenko and Gustafsson and being like, you.
Wouldn't mind it.
Oh.
Wouldn't mind it.
No, I wouldn't care either, honestly. But the part that it lost momentum in the room, like that is directly deadline related. We went through the deadline. We didn't really do much, and the room sagged. Garbage. Everybody in that room who let it deflate themselves, terrible. And again, I'm isolating one thing, not saying everything about them or their whole game, because people are going to take that as, oh my God, you hate. No. But I'm saying you want to be a contending, winning culture, get that crap out of that locker room. You want to make the playoffs? Go make the playoffs. Like, force his hand, prove him wrong. Give him a reason to believe in this group, because we, in our season review, outside of those 2 7-game winning streaks, did we have a lot of positive to go on about with their season? Individual performances, sure, but as a team, no. They were 2 7-game winning streaks away from being a lottery team. What? Like, there's not a GM in the world who's paying premiums, even second-round picks at the deadline, to add to that team.
I just got massive deja vu. I was going to make a joke about, we're all sitting here saying, oh, if they could only have won a little bit more, but actually the 7-game win streaks were the problem. They could
have only lost a little bit more.
And I'm positive this is the 3rd straight season that I was going to make that joke. Go on, Brad.
But yeah, it's your professional athletes who are in the middle of a playoff race. And yes, they had a 4-game losing streak going into the deadline, but they were still right there. Like, it wasn't the long odds that we were trying to somehow justify for the last couple weeks. They were still right there. And if you let the room sag after the deadline and then the free fall continues, I'm sorry, that's not on Yzerman. That's not even on McClellan. That's on those players. I called into question around that time the leadership group in that room. Like, how does this keep happening when it matters most? And then we hear this, and I know players aren't going to dive into the analytics of it all, but I don't think people realize how few points in the standings a single player can impact. Like, it was the point I was making in our one group chat. Mikko Rantanen was the best player available. The Red Wings needed 5 more points in those final 5 or 6 weeks, whatever it was. Mikko Rantanen alone is probably not getting you that many points in the standings. Like, and Yzerman obviously wasn't going for Rantanen. Does Zetterlund get him into the playoffs, which would have been a good, fine deal? Nope, not even close. Like,
but flip the Montreal result. That's a 4-point swing, and then that's really you're looking for 10 more minutes of good hockey, and then 1 point after that.
Yep, and after 2 dominating periods, they completely deflated in the third period, like they always do. Like, I'm sorry, that's on the team. Like, they were out shooting them 30-9, and it was 1-1. Okay, fine, it happens. But then, like so many other games, we saw them sag that game, and yeah, that would have been a huge swing, but one player was not changing that.
Certainly have conflicting feelings on the whole thing. Like, from a player's perspective, I totally get it. Like, could have injecting anyone of value have given points boost? Potentially. Could it have given a morale boost? Apparently, yes. I also get it from like a GM perspective too, right? Like everything you guys laid out, like the Red Wings were not, as a team, were not positioning themselves to make the playoffs. They had losses against the wrong teams at the wrong time. And I understand that adding with what they've seen doesn't make a lot of sense, especially paying premium assets. But I get it from Larkin's perspective, man. Like, he's been here, 10 years? And it's been this slow burn the whole time that's not all Steve Yzerman's fault, of course. But eventually you're just like, enough is enough. Like, when are we going to start doing something? Like, yes, it's great that we've added into the draft, but that's been slow too. Like, we're just getting some of these guys into North America now. Like, I totally sense his frustration, and he's had to bear the brunt of this for his entirety as the team's captain. So I get both sides of the fence, and if I'm sitting there, I'd be trying my best not to say it too. And I know for sure at some point I would be saying something like that as well, because it's so frustrating, and it's starting to get frustrating. I mean, I know it's frustrating for fans, but even the diehards who are, holding on as long as they can before they want to put the pedal down, like, it's tough, man. The slow burn is really starting to kill some people, and apparently it's happening in the locker room too.
And that's what it comes down to, right? Like, again, it just feels like everyone from Yzerman to Larkin to the fans to the room, you understand how everyone gets to where they are. And when you're frustrated and when you're passionate and a combination of those things, you're not always going to be the most rational and level-headed. To your point, Brad, about, the malaise in the room and guys, being kind of down about it. I understand what you're saying. And at its surface, I don't disagree with that mentality. I think as a team, your job is to dig in with what you have. And unfair though it is, that's what you got to do. And I also don't want to make a mountain out of, like Larkin saying, it would have been a nice morale boost and everything. It's not like he went out there and said everyone was Eeyore in the locker room. No. So you got to, like everything else, bring that into the middle. It's not an extreme, reality of that statement. But your job is to kind of bear down and grind. But if you've done it for 3 years, you've done this for 3 years, you've gotten so close, that this team in those 7-game win streaks were overperforming. And so it's like, the reality is as the team is made up, even if you buckle down and grind, you have these holes where, you have Justin Holl out there playing way more minutes than he realistically should. You have a lack of scoring. You have, a lack of a solution in net for late season. I get it. I get why you would feel discouraged, because you're like, it's a miracle that we're even here, but we're so close. Like,
just give us anything.
Yeah.
Give us someone with a heartbeat.
Like, we sit here and say it's disappointing that this team didn't make the playoffs, but on paper that probably tracks with what we saw on the ice and on the roster. He knows that too. So it's like, we're saying, yeah, your job is to bear down and play. And that's real. I don't disagree with you, Brad, but he's also like, look at this roster on paper. We have a lot of holes, but just right now we need something. And I mean, the summary of all this is that this is just the same frustration that, like you mentioned, Evan, that even the core diehard fans are feeling. It's in the room too. And it's just like, you just want to push past these barriers.
And it's not like it's one of their replacement or duplicate saying this, it's your captain, right? Like he sees the continual turnover at the bottom of the roster and is like, this is really what we're working with this year and this is what we're going to do? Okay, we're probably in for another season of what we've done before. Like we're going to have some deja vu all over again.
Yeah.
And he's probably just tired of emptying his locker every April and answering the same questions about X, Y, and Z. So should Yzerman have added? I don't know. It's a complicated answer. Obviously, the team wasn't where he thought they should be, but I get what Larkin's saying too. Like the slow play is really starting to hurt. I think everybody can be right and everybody can be wrong.
That's exactly it.
Yeah, but to Brad's point about the whole woe is me attitude, like it definitely comes across and you can see it in the play sometimes, but you know, adding high-end talent, does that help alleviate that? I don't know. Maybe that's what Dylan Larkin's looking for and looking to experiment on.
It's the juxtaposition as well, like playing Four Nations, which is a sensitive topic because he came back hurt, but he played with that team at Four Nations and then coming back and it's like you see what just one better player on the ice of 5 guys can do, 6 guys, including the goalie. And then you come back to a team that looks the same as it did before and doesn't make a move. It's going to be loud. The optics of it for everyone sucks. Everyone can be right, and the optics for everyone sucks. Yeah, of course, Yzerman didn't make a move, and fans are frustrated at that, and made the wrong moves in the offseason for free agency and filling out the roster, and fans are frustrated at that. Larkin came back from Four Nations hurt, and the team lost 4 straight, 2 to Columbus, and fans are frustrated with that. It's everyone's right, and also everyone has themselves to blame at least somewhat as well. So
it'll be interesting to see how the offseason now plays out.
And that's
because
the next
I don't
part,
think Dylan Larkin would come out with those comments if conversations haven't occurred and whatnot. So now it's really a put your money where your mouth is for both sides. Dylan Larkin's got to have a great offseason, and he's one of the best players on this team, and I expect nothing less, and I'm sure he does as well. So we'll see what he comes up with, and it's the ball's in Yzerman's court now as well.
Yeah, and I think that's what it points to. And again, any extreme here of, Larkin wants out or he's giving an ultimatum, no. Larkin wants to win with Detroit. This is his team. It's a hometown team. It's his captain's family's here. Like, he wants Detroit. It's not like Larkin wants to be winning anywhere. Larkin wants to be winning in Detroit.
Yeah.
But it does, to Evan's point, it does just point to how important this offseason is. And that's obviously what we're now talking about now that we're past the season in review. Yzerman has seen the same thing 3 straight years. He also has seen how close you can get with a roster that had a lot of issues. So, I mean, if you want to be an eternal optimist, there's a lot of great silver linings to take away from that. Even if you don't perfect everything and plug every hole, your boat can get pretty far before it starts to sink. Like you're able to make the kind of improvements that put you at Montreal and Ottawa's level with 1 or 2 smart moves, not even in the very top of your lineup. So all signs point to Yzerman. I don't ever pretend to say that we know exactly what Steve Yzerman's thinking, but everything is positioned for Yzerman to be, at least relative to himself, aggressive this offseason.
I mean, Dylan Larkin was very close to his message just walking out to that presser in a Mitch Marner Team Canada jersey. But yeah, and again, I'll agree with the point you made way back at the beginning of it. If this is just frustration over the general roster, yeah, fair. I don't think anybody's been more critical about Yzerman's roster building than us. We agree with Dylan on that. And this can't be, and spoiler for theme of the offseason, even though we've been saying it for months now, this can't be a middle 6 bottom pair offseason. They need to go big game hunting, and they have to hit. They can't swing and miss on more Stamkoses and who the hell ever they're going at. If they set their eyes on an Ehlers or a Marner, they have to land one of them. They have to. Like, again, if I'm Larkin and I go and I see 3 new bottom 6 forwards, another bottom pair D going, what are we doing here? Like, I would absolutely be in the same boat as him.
Fans need they need excitement. And to start the season, we're talking Simon Edvinsson, Marco Kasper. There's got to be a big ticket, a piece of excitement for the fans to look forward to, because if the Red Wings roll into next season with, marginal gains or incremental improvements, and they don't start off well, it is going to be the longest season. And that sucks because we have to do a podcast twice a week.
The fan base it was almost more exciting when the team was expected to be bad and you had the hope. But now that the fan base has sniffed success, and rebuilds aren't linear, I'm not going to sit here and say what's happening right now is atrocious and they cause long-term damage to this team. No, rebuilds are never linear. A short plateau is normal. It's very hard to make a straight jump up. We're going to point to Washington a lot on this show. We're going to point to LA a lot on the show, and teams do around the league. But know that that's not easy or basic or always the case. And you also have some luck in there as well. But still, you have to make sure it's not anything more than a short plateau. You dip and you dip for too long. It's not about the on ice so much as you're going to lose your fans. And again, back to Evan's point before, people are frustrated with it and they're bored with it. They are absolutely checking out. And now they have the Pistons in the playoffs, and they have the Tigers who are continuing their insane run from last fall. And you have the Lions who are going to come in as Super Bowl contenders once again for everyone's betting odds. So yeah, you can't keep doing this year in and year out, and the fans do need excitement. Now, where I'll push back on what you guys mentioned is I actually think, a middle six, bottom pair offseason could actually be quite good for this team, because I think the core of this team is great and only getting better by and large. And so if you hit on, let's say, a middle pair defenseman, one middle pair defenseman and one middle six winger who's quite good for that role, I think that's fantastic. And you still go big game hunting. You go for Ehlers, you go for Marner, you go for whoever you identify as, yes, they would be worth breaking the bank for. I am fighting you, Brad, to be the one, to be the standard bearer holding that flag. 31 other teams in this league. You're not guaranteed to do it. I get that. So we'll see how that one plays out. But you do also have to nail the depth. And for the purpose of this conversation, I'm calling anything that's not the tippy top of the roster, the first line forward, top pair defenseman. If you can't land them, you can still make the kind of gains that'll get you in the playoffs down the lineup.
Absolutely you can. But one has to come with the other. I would be very happy if they just straight up replaced 4 or 5 of their bottom 6 forwards and at least 2 defensemen. And those are, well, I mean, one of them's a number 1 defenseman, but because, they have to. But if you don't solve the top of the lineups, cool. You signed Brian Dumoulin. Okay, he's playing on your top pair with Mo Seider. Cool, you signed Ryan Donato. Okay, well, he's going up and playing with Larkin and Raymond because someone has to go there. They didn't fill that hole. The issue isn't, the issue is the bottom 6.
The sound of that, though. Maybe I'm sick. Maybe I have Stockholm syndrome.
But the thing is, the issue isn't just that the bottom 6 and the bottom half of the defense is bad. It's that they're bad, and a couple of them have to moonlight up in the lineup because there's nobody else to go there. So if you don't plug that first line hole, one of these slappies is going up there. If you don't get a good defenseman, guess what? Ben Sherratt's still on your first pair.
They prefer the term competent bum.
They don't have any of those. They're either good or useless. There's very few in-betweens on this team.
To their credit, we said last episode, there's the ones who are the replacement level, the slappies, the competent bums, and I think there's also the guys who are over-deployed. And in Ben Sherratt's case specifically, I want Ben Sherratt on this hockey team.
Ben Sherratt is an excellent number 5 defenseman, a very passable number 4 defenseman.
Exactly.
He ain't playing that. So if you don't solve it, he's a number 2 defenseman.
Here's the thing. Fully agree. Again, I'm holding that flag with you, Brad. But not setting expectations so people, to be an Yzerman apologist or a Larkin apologist or anything. It's just the reality of how these things go. That much roster turnover based on how the NHL works, the kind of free agents who are out there, the contracts you have is hard. And I would be shocked to see 3/4 of that accomplished. I would love to see it. Addition by subtraction is absolutely needed on this team, and there should be some. And, bringing in outside help should happen on this team, and it would be a big help. But it's incremental. Like you make those moves as you're able. All of this is separate from the big game hunting, but it's not like I want to set expectations, not because I want everyone to like Yzerman and feel good about the Red Wings and you can never have any negative thoughts. It's not that at all. It's the fact of what can you realistically expect based on the way the NHL works.
Yeah, and your point is objectively correct, but then you also kind of have to criticize on the way we got here. We have went through this incremental phase for years now.
Yeah.
And they've done it poorly. That's why we have Gustafsson and Tarasenko and Holl and top pair Ben Sherratt. I like Ben Sherratt so much. I hate how much I'm slandering him this episode, for the record. But it's because they've done it so poorly, and now they're still in the position where, you're right, they need a lot of turnover in the depth in this roster. I don't think there's any Red Wings fan who disagrees with that. But it does not matter if they don't solve the top of the roster. Yeah, incremental improvements might get them into the playoffs next year. Huge step, great, awesome. That ain't what we're here for. You need to solve the big problems. Might not happen, because again, it is worth repeating, and we have heard this was the case in previous off seasons. You might not get any of the big fish because none of them want to come here. Fair enough. If you talk to Marner, Ehlers, Bennett, Marchand, Tavares, and they're all like, no thanks. It is what it is. There's always trades, depending on players' trade protection. Some guys might not have a choice, so
Go offer sheet Peterka.
yeah, like there's options, but they're not as good. But yeah, I'm in full agreement. This roster needs a significant overhaul. And if it doesn't get it, Larkin's going to be right to be frustrated. But if we want to circle back to focusing on Larkin in this conversation specifically, if you don't solve that first line left wing problem, of course he's going to be angry. Because not only does that affect the team, it directly affects him because he's the one who has to play with Michael Rasmussen there or whoever the hell it's going to be. Like, it's a problem, and he's right to be frustrated about it.
We could go in circles on that forever, but going to move on for now. One thing I want to just point to is it's been noted a lot of times from folks, and it's been noticed by fans especially, that Steve Yzerman, Todd McLellan, especially Yzerman, hasn't done his end of season presser yet. I think folks were maybe expecting that around locker cleanout day. There's like, I'm not trying to sit here and say anything is happening or definitely is going on in the back end, but it is notable that it hasn't happened yet. But you also have to remember Yzerman is very much a beat of his own drum kind of guy. So if you try to see too much past the curtain and, you know, infer too much, I think you're just kind of going down an endless black rabbit hole there. But just noting that there is nothing on the books yet, but we'll see what the next, half week or week or so brings us. I know people are going to be looking forward to hearing from McLellan, but especially Yzerman, and that question will be the most poignant one, no doubt. All right. We're going to take a quick break on this episode of the Winged Wheel Podcast to hear from the sponsors of the show. And when we're back, more news from across the league. Plenty of it. Back after this. Welcome back. This whole episode is dedicated to Jim Rutherford and his absolute refusal to ever use a filter when he speaks. And I'm saying this unironically. The man is a content machine and just always says the quiet parts out loud, the loud parts out loud. He just kind of says everything out loud that he's thinking. I love it. It absolutely fits with Vancouver's, the way that whole organization runs. If you're a Canucks fan, Godspeed. I hope you have all of the beta blockers and, relaxation pills that you need, because, oh man, the stress must be off the charts. But for the rest of the league, this is just content gold.
Everybody's sitting back, enjoying the hell out of the press conference, except for maybe the Canucks' actual GM, Patrick Allvin, who was sitting there politely smiling and nodding at the chaos happening beside him.
So, among a lot of other things, Rutherford said about Quinn Hughes that Quinn has said before that he wants to play with his brothers. That's not like a crazy concept to anyone. Anyone who has heard of brothers in a league know that they almost always want to play together. But for him to acknowledge that in a presser when he previously in the season talked about like needing to make sure that they can retain Quinn unless he walks is kind of wild. Then he goes on to say that would be partly out of our control. In our control is if we brought his brothers here. That's insane. One, tampering, I think, probably. Two, how without Quinn Hughes would you trade for even Jack Hughes, let alone Jack and Luke from the New Jersey Devils? Three, the Devils are playing right now in the playoffs.
Well, kind of.
The delusion and the audacity are both incredible, and I respect it so much. And if you're a Canucks fan, how are you thinking anything else other than, okay, well, we're going to lose Quinn Hughes then? That's it. Like, he is legitimately on a path out the door right now.
God, do I appreciate Jim Rutherford just saying whatever's on his mind. Like, there's so much to this. Okay, first, the silver lining being a Red Wings fan is we're not dealing with that. And that might not even be the biggest disappointing news a fan base has heard in the last 2 days in regards to a GM or anything like that. I understand what he's getting at, and I understand how he's, in a way, protecting himself here. There is a bit of he just put the ball in Quinn Hughes' court with the fan base. He said, we cannot afford to lose Quinn Hughes. But hey, fans, you need to understand he might not want to stay, and there might not be a thing I can do about it because he wants to play with his brothers.
Yep.
Should he be doing that? No, absolutely not. You just eat it when it happens, right? You don't, because now there's going to be a whole year or two of absolute turmoil until something happens, whether it's an extension, a trade, walks to unrestricted free agency, whatever it is. But I get what he's doing. Still doesn't make it right.
Quinn Hughes, who has how many years left on his contract? 2 more at $7.85 million. That Quinn Hughes, who's like a heart level player right now, that is one of the best contracts in the league. So 2 years, right? That's enough where you have something to work with. But if he actually is forcing his way out, he doesn't have trade protection, so you can move him. And that's actually an excellent point, Brad. I do think there's an era of, hey, we're protecting ourselves, which fan bases would have a reason to be mad at, because it's like, okay, there's a lot of other things with the way this organization's run that we're frustrated with if you're a Canucks fan. But aside from that, it's also protecting yourself because, yeah, it's a great point. Family trumps all else. And if you have an opportunity to play with your brother in the NHL, like 99 times out of 100, they're going to want to do that. And that's the kind of thing where it like forces you to just make extremely tough decisions. You know, you think about Calgary, and rest in peace Johnny Gaudreau, but when he left Calgary, he loved Calgary. He loved that organization. He loved leading that team. It was hard for him, but what made him go back out east and choose Columbus was family. He didn't dream of being a Columbus Blue Jacket. He wanted to be closer to his family and raise his family closer to the rest of his family and allow his wife to have that support. You look at Matthew Tkachuk when he left Calgary, and he was passionate about going and playing elsewhere. And I wonder if one day we're going to see Brady join Matthew down in Florida. But it's a tough position. So yeah, priming the fan base is, I do see the tact there. And he has no trade protection. So if a trade's going to happen, you start to lay the groundwork now. But I just don't see as an organization how you're going to try to tactfully get your way out of a trade where you're losing Quinn Hughes and get better. Especially if you know that there's one place he's willing to go. The Devils have them over a barrel there because they're like, okay, we'll just wait a couple of years and get him for free in free agency, right?
Exactly, because Luke's young enough that he's coming out of entry level, so they have team control for a while. Jack signed long term. And I mean, the other part of this we haven't really dove into is look at the state of the Canucks. They're not fighting, but like negotiations aren't going great with one of their top prospects, Tom Willander, who's
bring him to Detroit.
Yeah, he's threatening to go back to BU for another year, even though he wants to turn pro because they can't agree on a contract. Brock Besser's not coming back. What else does this team have? They just lost JT Miller. Expensive Pettersson is not like his comments towards Elias Pettersson too were not scathing, but like a message was being sent there.
JT Miller's not on the team. Throw him under the bus.
Yeah. So like, if they rebuild, which it looks like they're running headfirst into no other option, Quinn Hughes is not going to stick around for that. And if you trade him, you get a king's ransom for it, which is a good head start to a rebuild.
The most balls to the wall thing that they could do is do that now and go for Gavin McKenna next year.
They got a chance. And I mean, it's crazy to think about because they were in a going for it mode last offseason and it just went off the rails. Now, I think most people agree, like the Canucks were a good story last year, but they weren't second round of the playoffs good. They just had a run hot, some goaltending, favorable first round matchup. Hey, you get lucky every once in a while, it happens. But I think it created this false narrative in their head that there's something they're not. And now they're realizing very, very quickly, oh, we're in trouble.
Who are they? The Detroit Red Wings?
No, they got to the playoffs.
Oh, okay. Sorry, my bad.
Yeah.
Okay, but who would you rather be right now, the Canucks or the Red Wings?
Oh, the Red Wings, 100%.
Yeah.
If we had to do the JT Miller Elias Pettersson thing, I would have lost my absolute mind.
Yeah. we would have to take it away. All, not even sharp objects, blunt objects, all objects from you before you entered that arena.
The poor gain control on our mixer would have blown off my microphone.
We should be so lucky to have an expensive Pettersson issue one day just to see how many veins we can get appearing in Evan's temples. If there's any way to capitalize, here's the thing. The boring part about all this is unless you're trading for all three Hugheses, the only team that's really going to factor into the Quinn conversation if he does end up leaving is New Jersey. Wild card here, maybe 1% chance Vancouver brings the two other Hughes brothers over, and it's actually going to happen that way. But if you can capitalize on any kind of dysfunction and bring in a Willander type, or if they want to be delusional and feel like they can make it and they want, we want players now and we'll give you some premium futures, then maybe that's an opportunity to offload a contract or a guy who's kind of not dead weight, but really not slotting well enough on your roster. For the Red Wings and all other teams, when a team is in chaos, when a team is in dysfunction, that's when you're calling them relentlessly. So Vancouver is a wild card. We'll see if it at all factors into anyone else, but at the very least, entertaining. Also, they might lose Tocchet. They want to keep Tocchet. They have a team option on him, but they're like, we're not going to force him to stay if he doesn't want to stay. So they're basically making him as big of an offer as they can stomach and see if that's enough to keep him or if he's going to end up going to Philly. So we'll see. Elsewhere, right before the show, things that are funny, Kris Drury, for everything going on in New York, signs a multi-year extension.
I have never seen a GM so publicly hated since, oh my God.
Jim Rutherford, like one segment ago.
I was going to say, but you probably have to go back to the 70s by the team. And they extended him. I think most people thought he was gone at the end of this season, and they extend him.
That's Dolan, baby.
Oh my God.
And I don't know what to make of that. Like, I don't know. Is it the team? Is it a mentality thing? Was it coaching? Was it leadership? Was it the GM? Was it all ownership? Is it all of them? Does everyone suck? But the Rangers are just Vancouver East, and not just because they have JT Miller.
Yeah, like this is the classic, the beatings will continue until morale improves, and I don't think morale is improving with this team. Drury attempted his best. He did his best impression of the Vegas Golden Knights, and it's failed horribly. He threw a grenade in there thinking someone would jump on it and be a hero, but instead everybody just blew up.
Speaking of grenades, another shakeup with the Seattle Kraken, who after one season are moving on from Dan Bylsma. So their next coach will be their third in 3 years.
That's a mark of success for sure.
Well-built roster too. So, it's all on the coach.
They don't make sense, that organization. Ron Francis, who's been the team's GM since their inaugural season, is going to be promoted into the president of hockey ops role. And then Jason Botterill, who was previously GM of Buffalo and then assistant in Seattle for the past 4, is going to be GM.
Brad, you're laughing, but I honestly think that's an improvement.
It is. And that's what makes it funny. When you look for, what I need for managerial success? A recent Buffalo Sabres manager.
Well, Peter Chiarelli keeps getting hired, so clearly that doesn't matter.
And now they have a coaching search. Again, I don't know, man. I understand the allure of having the establishment and the established presence of a guy like Ron Francis, especially as you were creating a team out of thin air. But I agree, like, yeah.
This is very Wayne Gretzky behind the bench of the Phoenix Coyotes vibes.
Well, I'll give them a little bit of credit. From what I've heard, Francis seems to be well connected within the league, well respected, manages up very well. So if he's in the president of hockey ops and he is hands off with the roster building, this actually does make a little bit of sense. So I could see the rationale there. If he is still hands on in the roster building part of this, that's a problem.
I don't really like this whole new president of hockey ops and then a GM structure. I think for Colorado is like, everyone looks at Colorado, they're like, oh yeah, Sakic stepped up and McFarland became GM. They didn't want to lose him, and that's how they retained him. But I think there's more instances of just there being too many cooks, and not even just too many cooks. If there's one bad ingredient in the stew, it's going to spoil the whole thing, right? And I don't know that you can have that many decision makers unless they're all, beacons, bastions of collective teamwork and bouncing ideas off each other and not being afraid of no, which that doesn't hockey players, ex-hockey players, hockey management, they're very proud, and their biggest issue is that they can't hear no historically. So I don't know. That structure is always, it fails more often than it succeeds in my mind.
Yeah, it's you got two in a box there, and we saw it very publicly in Toronto at the end of Kyle Dubas's tenure. It's just the philosophy needs to be completely aligned, and it always feels like one decision could start the erosion of that relationship. So it's really difficult to those two positions to be in line with one another at all times and build a competent roster is very, very difficult.
Speaking of proud people who are set in their ways, Lou Lamoriello let go by the New York Islanders.
This has been a weird week.
There's news where you're like, why is that happening? And there's news where you're like, why is that happening now? And Lou Lamoriello, I think it was just a matter of time, but that whole thing has been basically, it's like a dam broke free and all the water is rushing out now. Like, they let go of Lou and everything's coming out about, didn't really see eye to eye with Patrick Waugh and they butt heads. And you're like, but he hired him like abruptly. And it was a strange hire. Like, he did that.
Lou strikes me as the guy who would just meet someone, shake their hand, be like, I like this guy because he's got a firm handshake. We should hire him.
Maybe. He still has the haircut rule. Like, he's leading the Yankees. He's out. They're going to do a complete exhaustive search, and then they're going to see what happens with Patrick Waugh and the team staff after that. But the Islanders have moved on from the reign of Lou Lamoriello. And I don't know, does Buffalo bring in Lou Lamoriello?
Oh, God, I could see it. Like, not even to be funny, I could see them doing it.
The Islanders are going to be the hairiest team in existence next year.
It was just a crazy, crazy weekend. That's just some of the stuff. Kris Drury being extended, which we mentioned. It's just some of the stuff off the ice. On the ice, the playoffs have been... First off, I now understand why the Minnesota-Vegas game started at 11 p.m. Eastern last night, because the saucer passes from Kirill Kaprizov are absolutely R-rated. Like, that had no business being on daytime television. Like, filthy passes. But the playoffs have been insane. I think we have to start with Edmonton starting tragically down 4-0 and then 5-1, tying it with, a minute and a half, 2 minutes, whatever it was left in the game.
They scored 2 and with under 2.5 minutes left to tie it.
From down 4 twice. And then
that team does absolutely nothing until Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl are back on the ice, which is 80% of the game.
And I mean, it's a new story for them this year. Usually in the past, it's been their goaltending and their defense who's let them down. But this year is different. It was their defense and their goaltending that let them down to start the game. Skinner wasn't good, but then the defense also gave primo grade A expected goals are like 0.99999 on that shot. Plays like 7 times to start that game. No wonder LA capitalized.
We complain a lot in Detroit about, it's not just that they had problems, it's that the problems were predictable. Imagine that still happening, but you have Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. Like, genuinely, if you dropped McDavid and Draisaitl on the Red Wings today, they're a better team than this iteration of the Oilers, yeah?
Yes.
Like,
Cam Talbot, I think, is better than Stuart Skinner.
Like, it's every year the Oilers struggle to get through the playoffs. And they got all the way to Game 7 of the Cup Finals last year on McDavid's back. Every year they don't win the Cup, it's GM malpractice. Like, every year. We said it about prime Crosby, Malkin, Letang era, and then they figured it out. Same thing with the Oilers. You have two of the, if not the two best players on planet Earth, and you cannot build around them, and you cannot get a defense, which you've never had. You cannot get
Ekholm
a goaltender.
Being hurt sucks. Like, Ekholm being out is a massive blow to that team.
That really hurts, but still, teams get injuries. It happens every year. It's hilarious to me. Everybody all year, hey, you might want to get a goalie. Hey, you might want to get a goalie. And then Skinner would rip off like 2 or 3 games, and they go, no, see, we're fine. And then predictably, like, oh my God, that team is hilarious.
And the fact that they ended up losing that game, like, in regulation still, it wasn't even an overtime loss.
On a muffed, undeflected shot from the high slot.
He was screened, and it was a weird, like,
but
it
that
was a
puck
weird
was
duff shot.
And that puck was going so slow, even with a screen, there was somewhere you had to pick it up.
It was like a pitcher gave you fastball middle, like 4 times in a row, and then just threw like the filthiest knuckleball at you. Like 72 miles an hour. Like,
except you swung and missed at all the fastballs before it too.
Yeah, also that team, man.
It's entertaining. Glad it's not us.
Who was it? Kempe, who had the sick celly, like the step with the tongue out. I'm like, dude, you're grooving 4 or 5 goals like that on McDavid, Draisaitl, and the Oilers. Like, yeah, my tongue would be out too.
Like, imagine Connor McDavid walking into that locker room after he had 4 or 5 points in that game and walking away with a loss.
That was, I don't watch a lot of McDavid games because they start right when my bedtime's occurring. But just his sheer determination to put that team on his back and claw into the game is like just out. It's not from this world. He makes it look like he's like on a conditioning stint. He's playing down in like the East Coast Hockey League, just trying to get his legs back under him. He embarrasses some of the best players on the planet. It's like I said, I'm glad we're not an Edmonton Oilers podcast.
I honestly think that guy is also like, he load managed himself this season.
Well, we'll find out.
Yeah.
I think we found out.
Yeah.
I think we found out.
Yeah. Did he do it enough to carry this team of whatever they are into the next round?
This team, maybe not, but most teams, yeah, he's there.
Toronto, Ottawa has been a closer on the ice, kind of, but the entertaining back and forth. The Stolars not getting penalized for
insanity.
I'm happy that he survived that vicious attack in front where he was.
We're still looking for the guy.
But that series could very well be 1-1. I think Minnesota coming out with a strong statement against Vegas was massive as well last night. Dallas getting that overtime win against Colorado to split the first 2 games there. I mean, we're recording this before the Wednesday night games come out. Florida, massive win over Tampa Bay. Vasilevsky was nowhere to be found. My God, 6 goals against.
On what, like, did they even hit 20 shots?
No.
I know it was like 5 at 18 at one point.
Yeah.
Oh, and that was a tough challenge by Cooper that led directly, instead of it just staying at 3-1, ended up 4-1 because Tkachuk scored, 15 seconds into the power play on the failed challenge? Oh, it's a tough game if you're Tampa. But hey, they're Tampa. Like,
yeah,
we'll see what happens.
You're far from calling that series over. Carolina seems to be
that's a bad one.
They're a team in control right now over the Devils.
Yeah, the Devils, they don't scare me at all, just like Carolina doesn't scare me at all. But the Devils are severely injured and missing their best players, so I don't know how New Jersey gets back into this.
St. Louis being down 2-0 to me is also like, I think Winnipeg is the better team, absolutely, but those games were closer than I think they got credit for. They kind of like the first one burst open right at the end, and it was close, and 2-1 in game 2. Like, I'm not counting St. Louis out of this to make it interesting. Also, Jim Montgomery's singing as his team was about to lose in regulation. Dude's rock, man.
Yeah, just guys being dudes.
Yeah. We'll see how the playoffs unfold. I am going to be eagerly watching the next iteration of Edmonton, LA. By God, for a man who loves defense, I hope it stays out of that series, because what a joy game 1 was. All right. That's enough on the NHL. Let's jump into our prospect profile for this episode. This is a player that's been commonly requested, and we're getting, again, into the range where this might be what Detroit is looking at. Kayshawn Aitcheson, the Barrie Colts. Does he fit the bill in terms of who Detroit should pick up as a top 4 left D option? Or is there something to be concerned about with him in terms of, being a late birthday? Are the records he's setting a little bit of fool's gold? Where are you at on Aitcheson?
I like the player, but I'm cautious because of that late birthday thing you mentioned. He's not huge, but he's big. He's solid. But how much of that is because he's an 18-year-old and not a true 17-year-old like most players going into this draft? He's physically imposing. He's got good offense to his game. I wouldn't say he's got dynamic skill, though. There's a separator there. I think he's got a good head for the game, good shot, can make plays, but he's not that pull you out of your seat with wicked plays type defenseman like Jackson Smith has a little bit in his game. But left shot, physical. There's a lot to like there. Near point per game defenseman, but again, it's worth repeating, this is his 3rd OHL season, so that is not a 1-to-1 comparison with a lot of the defensemen that are going to get drafted around him. So you have to keep that context in mind. I do like the player. Given the Red Wings are picking 14th, I'm hesitant. I know what I said there. I know what I said there. I was waiting for you to correct me.
If 2 teams behind Detroit win that lottery, Evan and I'm grabbing Evan's ankles and we're both jumping one after the other like it's the Simpsons out of the window, the studio.
Yeah. I don't know if I'm that high on him, but I think the archetype of defenseman that he is, and I think the Red Wings are one of the few teams where him being left-handed plays to their advantage. I'm intrigued. I'm not all the way there yet on him, but my interest is piqued.
I agree with Brad. The framework of him is extremely enticing. And does he fit a direct need for the Red Wings? Absolutely. The Red Wings are dying for a minute muncher, give a shit type of defenseman on this team. He would be a prime candidate for me. But I'm also in agreement that I don't think he has an elite trait that makes him dynamic at the NHL level. I think he does so many things really, really well. But I don't think he's going to be a big point producer in the NHL. Like, I think he'll be a 3-4 guy on a team. For the Red Wings, that's perfectly fine. You're probably looking for that kind of player who can just play on your team for 10 to 15 years, play a bunch of minutes, hit guys into the 6th row of the LCA. That would be amazing. But is that the capital you want to spend at, as Brad said, 14th in the draft?
Like, my question with him is he Jacob Chychrun?
I would say no.
Or is he Ben Sherratt? The answer is probably somewhere in the middle, but they're both the same archetype of defenseman with very different levels of skill.
If he had one elite trait, if he was an elite skater, he would be a bona fide top 5 pick in this draft, I think.
The late birthday scares me. Because again, you see the near point per game, but then you look at his 17-year-old year and the numbers are still good, but not nearly as impressive. So there could be a bit of fool's gold there. But I think because defensemen take longer to develop, I'm a touch less concerned about that than if he was a forward. But there's still a level of concern there.
If the Red Wings are picking at like 20 and he was there, I would be like, this is the guy you got to go for.
You sprint to the stage. Yeah, that's not even up for debate. But yeah, I think the 15 range is right for him. And that is, like, even if the Red Wings are picking 12, in the range So he will very much be a consideration.
You know what? It, like any other player who's in that 12 to 20 range, it really depends on who's left by the time you get there. If this is another Zeev Buium year where there's a player like that falling, you throw away whoever you want. And I don't care how in love with their physicality or their compete you are, you're trading up to try to get the highly skilled player. But if there's a lack of, elite talent or elite traits, I like his game, and I am similarly intrigued, maybe even a bit more so. The late birthday thing is a good point, but I'm also not really looking at this guy to be a massive point producer. I think he has enough in his game where you're like, he's not going to be a complete black hole offensively. And I mean, depending on how much you value the physicality and the compete and the presence that he brings on the ice, that's not an elite trait like what we're talking about with skills, like puck skills, distributing the puck, playmaking, shot, things like that. So don't get it twisted, but it is incredibly valuable. And it's not going to solve the Red Wings' lack of compete or physicality or identity in the short term, but we also do see it as a necessary, thing to add in this lineup. So it really just, do you think the minute munching both ways defenseman that he's been in the OHL is something that can translate upwards? And if you think yes, if you can get a minute munching top 4 defenseman at pick 12, that's a fantastic result for a lot of teams.
So I guess really the question for me would be, would you trade your first round pick to get someone at the NHL level to fill that role going forward?
12th overall?
Exactly.
Probably not.
Exactly, right? Like there's still, as unlikely as I think it is, there's still a chance that he becomes nothing at the NHL level. I don't think that's true, but I don't know. I'm not trading a first round pick to get a 3-4 guy.
Yeah, I think the Red Wings.
You are?
A number 3 guy costs a first round pick in the NHL.
But a first round pick at 25 is not 12 overall.
No, but is
the
12
other
overall this year the same as 12 overall?
That's the caveat I was just about to throw in, is there's a pretty big drop off, depending who you talk to, between like 8 and 11 in this draft. So if the top 11, let's say, goes chalk, yeah, this might be the guy. He's not a worthy 12th overall pick most years, but he might be the worthy 12th overall pick this year. Like that reality does exist.
There's, especially for this type of player, there's always GMs who love these types of guys who just run through brick walls, blow guys up, willing to fight, willing to play that meat and potato style game, and they know his floor is super high. There's a likelihood he goes in the top 10 before he's even available for Detroit. I've seen his ranking all over the place.
Okay, I think I just thought of my favorite comparable for a current NHLer who's been around a while, so we've got a bit of a career arc for Aitcheson, and you can ask, would you take him at 12th overall knowing his career path? I could see a very realistic scenario where he's Jacob Trouba.
I think that's the comp Pronman gave him.
Is it?
So do you trade a 12th overall pick for Jacob Trouba's full career arc? He's a complicated player, but
again, it all
you
depends.
A lot of plus play at a lot of points.
Yeah, again, it would all depend who else is available, but yeah, I think that's in the range.
Yeah,
like Trouba went 8th overall, and I think if you redrafted his draft, he's not going that high again, but he's not falling all that far. So yeah, that might be the range for a player like that.
He had a career high 50 points, but that didn't really have a season anywhere close to that ever again.
Yeah, but Trouba was never the offensive guy.
And ninth overall to clarify. So
sorry, 9th overall.
Brad, he bleeds. He does make a mistake from time to time. He was one off. It's insane that you even remember that. 2012 NHL entry draft, you sicko. And he has played the 4th most games of anyone else in that draft. So yeah, I mean,
I wouldn't be upset. Like, I think context matters completely, and I think this solves a big problem for the Red Wings. Like, you're not going to need him to come in and be a 50, 60-point defenseman. That you already got 3 guys who are going to be able to do that. You just need someone who's got some give a shit and can play a ton of minutes to help alleviate the pressure on the other 3.
The only way I'd be really, truly upset about if Aitcheson is the pick at 12, 13, 14, whatever it ends up being.
12th is like, it's massively, like we joke about 13th, 14th. 12th is like 80 to 90%.
Yeah. Is if Jackson Smith or Roger McQueen falls and they pass on that upside to take a safer guy like Aitcheson. I think that's the only way I'd be a little upset about the pick, is because I think the Red Wings are the team above all other teams in this particular draft to take a swing if there's a high reward, high risk guy there, which I don't think that's Aitcheson. But again, if those guys are gone by the time it rolls around to their pick, yeah, you just got to take best player available.
Yeah, and at pick 12, the likelihood is you're not going to have a Zeev Buium year. You're going to have a year where it's like, yeah, well, all the big swings are gone. So you're either trying to find a diamond, not in the rough, but like you're trying to find some shine where other teams couldn't, or you understand that you're aiming for a guy who's going to be on your second pair or on your second to third line. And that's not every first round pick is a top line, top pair starting goalie player. That's just not how the NHL draft goes. You find guys later than the top 10 who do those things. Absolutely. One of those is the captain of the Detroit Red Wings, their first line center, but it's not a guarantee or where they generally go. So Aitcheson has a case for sure, and he's definitely labeled with the, we'll see what else happens in front of him. All right. We are going to take another quick break, and when we're back, the final segment here on the Winged Wheel Podcast. Back after this.
We're going to overtime.
Overtime, again, is brought to you by our Patreon supporters, patreon.com/Winged Wheel Podcast, the bonus episodes, the giveaways, the Discord, all of that and lots more. Let's take some questions from our patrons. Let's just get this over with. Darby Q says, how about them Kitchener Rangers?
Hell yeah.
Look, I Windsor, I'll always be Windsor Spitfires till I die. Born and raised. And Kitchener, for me, like, the transplant, you find the love for them too, because you have a shared cause, and that is hating the London Knights forever and ever, as everyone should. But the reverse sweep against Windsor by Kitchener is devastating. That's tough.
6th time in OHL history, a team came back from 0-3 down. Not only come back from 0-3 down, then win Game 7 in overtime. Like, what a series. That's insane.
It's revenge for a while back. Dallas Drake says, I have a confession. I like playoff Carolina Hurricanes, and I think they're a fun watch. Maybe it's because they're what the Red Wings hope to be if everything goes right for the Red Wings. What playoff team most resembles what Detroit can realistically hope to be like?
Montreal.
Montreal made a game of it. They made Ovi score in overtime.
Are we talking any playoff team, or do we want to focus in on the good ones that might have a chance?
No. If the Red Wings are going to make it in, what are they going to look like?
St. Louis, of all the teams right now, are probably it. They don't have that superstar level player, but a lot of really good players. And I would argue Detroit's defense has higher upside than St. Louis's. So in terms of roster construction, that's probably the closest I can think of.
JD says, what's your final read on the Veleno trade? Is it mostly about getting Peter Mrazek? I know Veleno didn't quite find what we were hoping he would be, but he was still young, a useful grind guy that can play wing and center and could be kept for very little money. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it was, they wanted a goalie with some certainty. I take Yzerman at his word when he said the extra year on the contract was a big plus for him. And then Craig Smith was just added depth, and Veleno never found a role in this pathetic bottom 6. So yeah, not to be harsh, but the definition of expendable.
Yep. It's again, with apologies to our good friend Darren here, like Veleno, if you can't make a statement for yourself in this bottom 6, you were just going to be, any passion to keep you is just going to be fandom and nothing else. Like, I like the guy. I think he can be useful in an NHL roster, maybe in a different setting or maybe with more time, but he never found a hold in Detroit. That's what I was saying last offseason. Like, I could see him being poised to be trade fodder. And I wouldn't even go so far as to say they needed to get the goalie. I think it was just let's just see what we can get for Veleno, because we don't think he has a long-term future on this team, kind of thing. So it turned out to be that extra year. I could have also have seen him in a bigger trade package. I could have seen him going for a pick if nothing else came. I just don't think he had a future on the team. Rasmussen and Petrie on a 2-0 breakaway says, I feel like the Red Wings have nothing of trade value except future first-round picks and the prospects we'd be comfortable losing. Who are the teams out there that would give us a significant piece without a roster player as a key piece going the other way? I'm going to disagree because the future first-round picks and all of their picks are very valuable, and you have a lot of prospects that you can dish out. There are guys, I mean, take out the qualifier you're comfortable losing. For the right price, I'm willing to pay quite a bit in terms of prospecting young player, value, so to speak.
Yeah.
You're not just giving away Kasper. You're not just giving away ASP. Like you would have to be compelled, and I mean compelled with a capital C, but it's possible.
Yeah, you look around the league, who has good players that might be entering a rebuild, not the stripped down teams like Chicago and San Jose, because honestly, who do you want off of them? I don't know. I look Vancouver, maybe. Boston, maybe. If they do decide to just fully tear it down, they would be all in on trading good players for picks. Islanders, see what happens with them under new management. They got a couple players that could be of some interest. Not a lot, but some. And then, yeah, I'm struggling to think of a team off the top of my head that would be willing to give up good player for futures, depending what way they go.
Any team who's gunning for Gavin McKenna are not really anticipating being good in a player's window, right?
You also have to factor in, does the team have any good players that are what you would be? Raquel in Pittsburgh, maybe?
A team looking to go through rapid transition, a team who doesn't like their identity, Vancouver, maybe Buffalo. If they don't like the makeup of players, that's how you end up with teams who jettison good players, right? It's not impossible. There's a lot of different shapes it could take. Jack's dad says Yzerman isn't going to do anything substantial this offseason. There's a reason his contracts have been so short. The UFA pool after next season includes McDavid, Panarin, Eichel, Kaprizov, Laine, Robertson, Connor, Natchez, etc. That's when Yzerman will strike with huge AAV in generous term. Yzerman will remind McDavid that Gretzky was almost a wing, but opted to go elsewhere and never held his cup again. One can hope. I'm all on board for that.
I like that approach.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're going to, subscribe to that theory as gospel. And if it goes wrong, we're coming for you. Will Bwakima says, look, I know there's nothing good to say about the Leafs, but Ryan, does your hatred for all jersey ads prevent you from respecting Toronto's milk and cookies jersey helmet combo? Echoing everyone else the last few weeks, thanks for making this season a fun one despite the team's best efforts. We're extremely lucky to have you all. Thank you, Will. Really, really appreciate the kind words. And I maintain it's a hard rule. There are no good jersey ads, but there are ones that are less bad. And the milk and Oreos ad combo is you unfortunately do have to hand it to the Leafs.
That was not coincidence.
That's good stuff. And even the script, like the milk script, it looks, you think of Minnesota or Pittsburgh's, those ones are atrocious. It looks like a local insurance company and they're conflicting colors in those jerseys. With Toronto's, it always disrespects the jersey to have an ad on it, but it minimizes it, and it's also hilarious. So, all right, we have time for one more here. That's a fun one to end. Cheesy Spoon 72 says, when is there going to be a giveaway for a round of golf with Ryan, Evan, and Hank? My limit for playing with golfers better than me is Evan, and I think Hank may have him beat based on Brad's kid's athletic prowess and how quickly they advance through the ranks. That kid is already, a single-digit handicap?
Probably.
He's already out in my backyard ripping tie spinners off the deck. I'm not golfing with Hank ever. There's no way. The moment a 5-year-old outdrives me, you're never going to hear from me again. I'm going to just go full Evan Lobsinger and go all pickleball and I'll pretend I never held a golf club in my life. Which also, if you see me hold a golf club right now, you'd think I'd never held a golf club in my life. So this year's season is opening later than last year's. Evan and I were talking, and last year I would have been really upset by that, but this year I'm like, it's probably a blessing. I am not.
It's like beach season. You're just not ready for it. You started last week and you're like, oh God,
I've been doing
too far gone.
You know when you do your fake back swings in your living room with no club in your hand?
No. Yes. Yeah, I do.
You there?
I don't really have to do that.
Oh, okay. Screw me then. Yeah, my backswing. I'm looking at my fake backswing. There's not a ball in front of me. No one's there. I don't have a club in my hands. I'm like, this looks bad, and I'm in control of what I'm doing. So yeah, it's like that. All right, we're gonna wrap up this episode of the Winged Wheel Podcast. Thank you all so very much for tuning in. We appreciate you greatly. To the sponsors of the Winged Wheel Podcast, thank you so much. Coffee Cult has increased their promo code WWP, discount to 15%. Give it a try. It is seriously excellent coffee cult with a K. To all of our listeners, thank you for spending your time with the show. We're really excited for what this offseason has to bring. We're not excited that it started so early, but still. And to all of our Patreon supporters, we could not do this without you. Patreon.com/wingedwheelpodcast if you want to support the show. And if Patreon's not for you, but you still want to help us out, wherever you get your podcast, subscribe. We're close to 12,000 subscribers on YouTube, on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, wherever. Just hit that subscribe button, leave a rating, a review, the thumbs up, the stars, tell a friend about the show. All of that really helps. To our name level supporters on Patreon, we cannot thank you enough. Arjun Shankar, Yves Bartels on behalf of the Sarah Grand Foundation, Aikfer, THL Champ, Samuel Soderholm, Icon, Glenn Brabham, Sea Lion, Matthew M. Rice, Adam Rose, Adam Zuiza, Admiral Matt S. of the Cheesebag Navy, Alex Toger, Anna Sleeman, Asher Killian, Beer League Legend, Best James Bond, Bingo Bango, Carl, Britannia Naluski, CB55, Citizen High Five, Clip Clop Nene, Connor Scovey, Craig Kibble, Denny's Gamer Girl, Derek Enstam, DJ Denton, Eric Hill, Give Blood Fight Probert, Grand Rapids Girly, Griffin God Creatives, Hatrick Sandine Pelika, Hockeytown Love, Hockeytown Matt, Hassam Al-Qassam, Jay Gollum, Jacob Turner, James McLean, aka Jambo, Jeff Pridemore, Jennifer Morris, John Ingalls, Jonathan Miller, Kaylin Wood, Mark Hernandez, Marty, Matt McKay, Michael Edlund, Mr. Kuzi, Now I Have to Learn How to Click on a Macintosh, Podgy713, R.A., Richard Perkins, Roy Donk, Ryan Britt, Sam Bankson, Slim Smitty Cards, Stephen Ortley, That's What I Appreciate About You, Tiger McDougal, Waldman's Elite Dancing D, Wings Fan in Chicago, Iser Plan Stan, Aaron Hudson, General Indy Bohan of the Cheesebag Army, A.A. Ron, Albert, Joe Sadson, All Motor No Hands, Ann Stanislavski, Another Future Consideration, Baked Starfish, Bands and Maker Dance, Belgium Acid Balls, Bex, Captain Antonio Gracias of the United Federation of Cheesebags, C.E. Hayes, Chris Falinsky, Clay Adams, who I believe is a new name level supporter. Welcome, Clay. Commander Ben Barron of the Cheesebag Space Force, Connor Layton and Corey Prida, Darren Fick, Drop the Puck, Dylan Larkin, Trade Sacrifice, Eric Nance, Evan Beckner, Gene Sullivan, Grepsky, Griffey Boy, James Pridemore, Johnny Page, Jeremiah Dobo, Jim, JM Rhapsody, Josh Yelton, Kevin McCracken, Quaz, Linda Hull, Lonnie Zone, Lucas Raitmond, Matt Keeler, Mitch Minier. My friend gave me this to remember him by just before he died. He couldn't speak of it. It was really important. I have this EpiPen. Thanks, Reed. Oh, Ophelia, Osgood Gets, Ryan M, Sadden, Soderplum, Worshipper, Joey Jojo Shabadoo, Sandy P, Right Hand D, Shit in the Bed for Schaefer, Steven, That Other Guy, The Hodag, The Hat 123, Trent Thorough, Wings Fan in St. Louis, Scott, and your second favorite patron. Thank you all so very much. We'll talk to you Sunday.
Thanks for tuning in to the Winged Wheel Podcast. Be sure to visit wingedwheelpodcast.com, where you'll find links to subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. You'll also find ways to support the show, like Patreon, official podcast merchandise, and more. And don't forget to follow us on X at WingWheelPod, at Ryan Hanna, WWP, at Brad Crisco, and at Hockeytown Evan, as well as Winged Wheel Podcast on Instagram.